Thank you, everybody. Welcome to the Steering Committee for the Town of Manlius Comprehensive Plan. It's our public hearing. And I'd like to, my name's Sarah Bollinger, and I'm co-chair of the Town of Manlius Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee. I've been designated by the Steering Committee to be the hearing officer to conduct this public hearing this evening. With me is my other co-chair, Heather Waters.
Hi there, I'm fellow counselor Heather Waters, and it's my job now to do the roll call of the steering committee members who are present. And what I'd like to do is just ask everyone to introduce themselves and say which part of the town you live in as well, if you don't mind. So we'll start with Rick.
My name is Rick Hall and I do mine. No, I live in Fayetteville.
Nicole Pataki, and I live in Chattanooga. Carrie Catalina, I live in Fayetteville.
I'm Leah Krause. I live in DeWitt, but I'm the assistant director of the Fayetteville Free Library.
I live in the town of Manlius in Fayetteville on Hope Lane.
I live in the village of Fayetteville.
Don Gates, I live in the village of Manlius.
Hey, Gallery. I live in Kirkville.
And previously this evening, we had Bill Kirchhoff here, who lives in Manoa, and we also had Bobby Sheff, who also lives in Manoa.
And Paul Burns, who's in
Yes,
Manlius.
Paul.
Oh, hey, Paul.
Good up here.
Hey, how did you do that?
I came in and all the seats were taken.
No, we've got a seat
Cheer
here.
So introduce yourself, Paul.
Yeah, do you mind sharing your name and where you are?
Hi, I'm Paul Byrne. I live in the village of Man, up by the ice.
Thanks, Paul.
Over here.
Oh, great. Once Paul is here, then we will move on to the next part of the meeting.
So welcome, everybody.
So
So,
welcome to the folks that are at home.
oh, yes, we have a number of people. Hi there. So the purpose of this hearing is to invite testimony from members of the public.
Everybody speak up, please.
Sure,
Thank you.
we will, yeah.
So the purpose of this hearing is to invite testimony from members of the public regarding the recommendation of the draft 2023 Town of Manlius Comprehensive Plan to the town board for adoption that is pending before this committee. All those in attendance are required to register by signing in on the sign-in sheet, which is
Right there.
and we will hear from members of the public in the order in which they have signed up. And we will also reach out to people who are on Zoom if they would like to speak after the people that are here in person. And what we'll ask you to do is simply state your name and if you represent anybody. Testimonials will be limited to 3 minutes. And we look forward to hearing from you.
So at this time, is there a motion to open this public hearing? So, thank you. And so, thank you, Kay. And do we have a second? Carrie Catalina. All in favor? Okay, so we're ready to roll. May we ask Allison, please, Allison Weber, our town clerk extraordinaire, to read the public notice.
Sure. Public hearing, Town of Manlius Comprehensive Planning Steering Committee. A hybrid in-person virtual public hearing will be held before the Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee of the Town of Manlius at 301 Berkeley Drive, Fayetteville, New York, in the County of Onondaga, State of New York, on Tuesday, March 28th, 2023, at 6:30 p.m. to hear public comments on the draft comprehensive plan. There will be an open house at 5 p.m. prior to the public hearing. The draft comprehensive plan is available on the town website and in the town clerk's office. If you would like to attend the public hearing virtually and provide comment, you may do so by following the instructions that will be provided on the town website. The town is also accepting written communications by email at aweber@townofmanlius.org and by regular USPS mail. Attention to Allison Weber, Manlius Town Clerk at 301 Berkeley Drive, Fayetteville, New York, 13066. If you have questions or would like to communicate your comments by phone, please call the town clerk's office at 315-637-3521, Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 4:30 p.m.
And we also have pages here that you took when you signed in, and there are also a couple on the edge of each table here. So if there's something you'd like to comment and you prefer not to speak in public, you're welcome to leave your comment there, and they will be considered just as much as if you had said it in person.
May we also acknowledge our two colleagues from Barton and Lejudas. We have Grace DeSantis, who's right there, and we have Keith Ewald right here too. Thank you very much for your support and partnership.
And this first half of it, they wrote and then we. So,
Everything you like, we wrote.
so you have the list of who signed up?
Oh, no, of course I don't. Sorry. I gave it to Allison.
Okay, okay, so what we would invite you to do is meeting is being recorded and these are the speakers. So when it's your turn to talk, if you could come to the podium and kind of aim yourself at the speakers, then people at home can hear you. And also it'll record about it.
And so we'll go through the in-person, and then I know we do have some virtual attendees, and so when we call for virtual attendees, if they just use the raise hand function, I'll enable you to be able to speak, and then everybody here can hear what you're saying. So I'm gonna go off the list, and the first person I have is Lucy Twitchell. Yeah, come on up.
And it's interesting. It was podium.
Hi. I just want to thank everybody that has contributed hours and hours to put this exciting plan together that supports an inclusive community, a diverse community, a community that cares about the environment and about affordable housing for everyone, not just a few, people with means and primarily white skin. I'm sorry, but this is the way that I grew up. I had parents in a very similar community back I was born in 1953, and their goal was to bring more people of color and more people of diverse classes into our very wealthy town. And my parents were very down-to-earth people who really didn't fit in, and they spoke up and were well loved, and this fair housing committee brought people of many colors and many incomes, and that's the environment I grew up in. And when I am very excited, this is my first meeting, and I'm a resident in Fayetteville 9 years. I'm a senior citizen. I have 2 grandchildren in the school system, and I just want to thank everybody, because this plan is how I was brought up. And thank you, everybody, for your hard work, and I sure do hope we can vote this into action. Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next I have Marty and Caroline LaCory. And I apologize if I get the names wrong.
Very well. People written down, hey, what was on that?
Oh, I have it. Want and I can turn it back in.
Hi, Caroline and I bought our home on Route 5 just east of the 290 intersection. Our understanding is that the exit for the proposed quarry is to be at that intersection. And we're here to speak in opposition to that. It's been a very dangerous intersection ever since we moved there back in 83, 84. And it took a long time to get a traffic light there, and there was several fatalities there before that actually happened. And we're concerned that this increase in traffic, which has been progressing year over year along Route 5, that corridor, and down 290 and both ways on Route 5. The addition of heavily loaded dump trucks at a rather blind intersection, in our view, is detrimental to the neighborhood. And we're very concerned about that happening at that location. The other things we have some concerns about are the quarry itself, degradation of the waterway that's right along Route 5 in that vicinity. We've experienced some water issues at our own residence. We're sandwiched in between 2 businesses who have, over the years, loaded tons and tons and tons of fill right along Route 5 on both sides of their home, which has created, shall we say, a wall in our residents. And we're seeing, every year, we're seeing increasing problems with flooding in our basement, flooding in the area where Our primary concerns for the core reactions primarily is concerned with traffic noise, air pollution, danger to residents because there are, let's say, new family in the vicinity with young children. The walkability of the Route 5 to 90 area is already risky. We're considering this is gonna make it just that much more dangerous in our estimation. So we try to, we're here to speak in opposition to that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Fred? Zach?
Very good.
It's a low pressure job over here.
So I'm Craig Dudzak. I live in the town of Manlius in Changing Seasons neighborhood. I want to congratulate you, compliment you for the extensive work you have done. One might even call it comprehensive. I do have, however, a few dark clouds to shine on it. One has to do with just the rollout. I think it is well, it's not good that you waited until the day before to publish this so that people can digest the 70+ page document plus its appendices and somehow make sense of all of what it says. That's not a good way of doing it, and not even make decisions about it, assuming that this commentary is going to be substantial enough. I have a couple of small things, but I want to go to the big thing first. How many of our village mayors are here?
I can't hear you, sorry.
How many of the village mayors are here? None. I know Paul Worrell is giving his State of the Village speech today, but it gets me to the overriding concern. We have a town of Manlius and we have 3 villages within it. And we have a comprehensive plan that somehow treats the town as though it is separate and independent of the contiguous communities that are contained within it. Now, I know there's a section of the recommendations that talk about coordination and cooperation and trying to do some things like that. When I moved here 37 years ago, I was confused because I moved to the village of Manlius. And people said, well, where do you live? And I said, Manlius. Oh, in the town or in the village? And so like, well, they couldn't come up with another name? Well, we got both. Okay, well, that's good. And then I had to get some work done on the house, and we had to get people, and when we get contractors, say, you live in the town or the village? Well, because the codes aren't necessarily identical. So we have differences in the ways in which some people wouldn't even come out if you lived in one or the other. Now, those are small things, irrefutable things, but the real problem becomes about the ways in which we duplicate costs and services among and between the different entities. And you would have thought for the many years that there was a single political entity that controlled both the towns and the villages, they would have come to the conclusion that if we were starting today, we wouldn't have all of these independent municipalities and towns. But of course, today with different government at the town level and at the village mayoral level, I don't think that's probably going to happen anytime soon. But as a citizen who's lived both in the village as well as now in the town, it seems to me ridiculous that our comprehensive plan doesn't have some more succinct and direct things that say, here's how we need to plan together. Not just the vague statements of trying to get some coordination on some purchases or whatever and whatnot. That's the big thing. I had a few little things. I don't think that, for example, the town is necessarily the only way you could get here is by car. Back in the day, it was a horse and wagon. And of course, we used to have a trolley. And as you, I don't remember, but I had a good friend sitting next to me who reminded me of it. They eliminated them. Why did they eliminate trolleys? Well, the real reason is because the bus companies wanted to have their buses. And in fact, if you read the history, not just in Manlius and Syracuse, but in the United States, there was a period of time when most municipalities had fixed rail kinds of services that were very good for getting people around. And then GM and the other manufacturers said, hey, it would be better if we could put buses in, so that way we can control that part of the market. So part of the history and the artifacts of why villages and towns existed and developed as they did is not necessarily because all the rich people wanted to live here. No doubt that's true. No doubt we moved here because of the schools, as I suppose many of you or your parents or others of you did as well. But having said that, there are many historical artifacts that contribute to the growth and development of the communities. I probably exhausted my 3 minutes, so I should be quiet now. But I would like to have you talk to the mayors and get them as part of the comprehensive plan in a more integrated way.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
Annalena Davis.
Hi, I'm Annalena Davis. I live here in the village of Fayetteville. I'm just gonna read something because I'm more articulate. So, I said, I'm just gonna read this because I'm more articulate when I read something versus when I speak. So I reviewed the final draft of the comprehensive plan this week and was really happy with what I read. And I'd like to express my support of the plan. I want to especially stress how important I think the goals of welcoming and healthy neighborhoods and modern mobility networks are to me personally. I chose to move to this neighborhood in the town 9 years ago because I wanted to live in a place where I could walk to stores and restaurants and have easy access to trails. But there's much more that we could do to improve the area for walkers and bikers. I'm excited to see a priority implementation item that would focus on safe and efficient mobility along North Burdick and other commercial areas. I'd love it if my kids and I could safely walk or bike from this neighborhood to the farmer's market or the YMCA, for example. It could easily be a 5 or 10 minute walk right through there, but we would, if we could walk safely across Burdick, which we can't right now. I'm also happy to see goals encouraging mixed income neighborhoods and more variety in housing options. As someone who used to work in community planning, I was happy to see this well-researched plan that recognizes both our strengths and our weaknesses and aims to make Manlius a better community. And I'm excited to see it put into action. Thank you guys all for your time.
Thank you.
Casey Quigley Hammerstadt.
I was hoping to go near the end, but.
Also,
I wanted to, most of all, thank every member of the steering committee, the 15 members of the steering committee, who were one of the most representative groups I've ever seen assembled to represent the villages, libraries, school districts, business owners. Starting at that place, I think, helped make this plan what it is. It shows that there were a lot of compromises made. I see that many things that I was advocating for didn't get in, so I know that there were compromises made. And I really appreciated along the way how many opportunities I got to participate in 2 listening sessions. I got to facilitate one, I got to study groups, I got to do surveys, I got to watch virtual meetings and go to workshops, all through this process as a person, just a person in our town. And I think that there are many important things said here tonight. I too would like to see our villages and our town work together in a way that makes sense. Last night was a comprehensive plan for the village of Fayetteville. I live in the village of Fayetteville now, but I lived in the village of Manlius at one time. Together, I lived in the town of Manlius for 24 years. I do not see moats around my village. I've never lived inside of a moat. And I really do think that we could plan better together and save costs, which we have taken actions over the past that do that. And we could save costs. Our environment is one environment. Our trees are one set of trees. There's a number of things like that. I don't want to get into the specifics because I know that I will have many other opportunities to give input. And I have some that I'd like to share. But most of all, to have worked for over 2 years as a group, to take all the input of all that type, those types from the public was an incredible challenge that I did not relish. I would never have wanted to do. It was so difficult to have people from so many varied perspectives on individual issues. So you have done a remarkable job. This is a very readable plan. It is a very attractive plan. The graphics and photos and the way you put the information together really helps communicate to us in a way that I think gets across. So thank you all very, very much.
I think now, would either be a time to call for more in-person speakers or take.
If there's people online, let's do that. and
Okay,
then-
so if you would like to make an online comment, please raise your hand.
Right. Is there anybody else in the room who would like to speak? Sure.
All right, then I will acknowledge that we have received some written. Oh,
Oh, okay. Okay. Tim, come on.
I'm Tim Kelly. I live at 217. I'm used to talking to town board meetings. But no, one of the things that I would like to see, I do agree with, it's a very comprehensive plan. I know from many of you how much work's gone into it. One of the things I'd like to see a little bit more on, so I live in the Homewood neighborhood, and flooding is a severe problem. You talk to any of my neighbors, we have a river that runs down all 3 streets. But that's gonna take considerable cooperation with the state on that. And I'd like to see that included into the comprehensive plan, because it's not just my neighborhood, there's other neighborhoods that are experiencing that as well. All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you. Nobody online stuff? All right, if there's no one else who would like to speak, being that there's no further testimony,
we do have to acknowledge, so we have one more, and then we do have to acknowledge some written comments.
okay, Tom, come on up, and then we'll do the written.
Apologize for sneaking in at the last moment, not getting on the list, but, my name is Tom Bassett, I've lived in, the town of Manlius since 1979, raised my family there. So I'd like to echo what was just said about, the quality of the, document that I skimmed today. Didn't have to use my own copying machine to produce it. I appreciate the town, this group, generating copies that I could pick up. So it contains all kinds of logical recommendations as to what could be done to address a whole myriad of issues, including zoning, all of which are extremely difficult to accomplish. So going forward, I commend those who will try to accomplish those goals. But one thing I wanted to mention, though, was it's been talked about the lack of walking, biking paths and the like within the town. The most painful example I can think of is FM Road. While we've been out here, there have been 2 attempts, I think, at least 2 attempts to create a sidewalk along the road. And also there was a possibility of having a walking, biking trail along, I think, Ledyard Dyke off the road. But both of those plans were shot down by neighborhood opposition. And therefore, lots of potentially good things seem to grind to a halt when there's sufficient local opposition. And I don't know what you can do about that. But anyway, good luck going forward.
Thank you. Okay, why don't you give us the submitted comments, and maybe that will trigger somebody else to say something before.
Yes, we have one that doesn't have a name on it, it just said that, we need to do something to address short-term rentals. And then we also did receive a, lengthy comment from Stephen Waiter. All of these comments, and I think,
There's a couple too.
yeah.
Yep.
I think that Mr. Gates had also received some comments. All these comments will be available to the public and, in the record.
And shared with the steering committee.
Yes,
members.
yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So that's what, those are what you have.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Great.
I have an additional one.
Go ahead.
Thank you so much.
Anybody else? Anybody else want to speak?
Sure, Sarah, I'll speak.
Okay, go ahead.
So good evening, my name is Jason Catalino. Full disclosure, I am a member of the FM Board of Education. My comments reflects my personal views and not that of the board, nor do they affect my wife. Who's so just 2 points I'd like to bring up. As the comprehensive planning comes forward, first sidewalks. So in conjunction and, full support of it. But just want to highlight 2 areas of particular concern. One is Route 5, which goes from Town Center up to Onondaga Country Club. So if we could extend that sidewalk, I understand it's very complicated because it's a state road. But as part of the 81 improvements, traffic is only going to pick up. And that intersection is actually the one that has the most, when you're at that light there coming out of Town Center, it has the most accidents in the town. So anything we can do to improve and get a sidewalk there, also along Enders Road. So to extend the sidewalk on Enders Road to run all the way from 173 out to 92, just with the number of students that walk and in that area, it would just be a really big improvement for the town. Secondly, I didn't see it in the committee, and I know Marissa Mintz is not here tonight, but also working with the school district to take a look at the schools. I know that we had talked about in the comprehensive plan, it talks about adding more housing. The school district right now, through all our buildings, occupancy rate is north of 90%. So any new infrastructure that would come in that would add multi-unit family housing would really put a strain on the schools, and we'd have to look to add. So just working in conjunction with Dr. Tice and the rest of the administration of the school district to make sure we're in lockstep so we can have space for all the students that are there. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Jason.
Okay. Anybody else? We got somebody, come on up.
We signed up with a no on the report, or if you want to get that.
Oh, sure.
Robert Humphrey, I live up on Turnstone Drive behind the high school. Only really got a chance to skim this report today, so I certainly appreciate all the hard work that's gone into it, and I like the majority of what I'm seeing in there. So glad to see the addressing the sidewalks in particular and mobility around the town throughout. I just wanted to know how much communication you've done with the surrounding counties, the town of Manlius. We have Madison County just over to our east there, with the towns of Chittenango and Casanova, which tend to feed quite a lot of traffic in on Route 5 or Route 92 in the morning. Because we want to make sure that there was some consideration put into what their development plans going forward were to handle potential traffic coming through the town of Manlius itself.
So I can share just briefly that we did, one of the steering committee meetings was with the planner for the Onondaga County because they're redoing their plan right now. So it was a broader view of, generally speaking, what Onondaga County is looking for, with also an understanding of the possible expansion around the Micron proposal, so that there's more maybe going on in Clay than would have been previously said. So, and many of the goals were the same. They were also looking at mobility. They were also looking at housing. It was many of the same principles that Onondaga County was looking at. Specifically with regard to Madison County, I have met with the town of Casanova, which is also doing a comprehensive plan. And with the village of Chittenango it wasn't specifically regarding this, but we had been in touch with the village of Chittenango regarding development along Route 5. And with the town of Sullivan. So that's as far as we've gotten with that. It hasn't been we haven't really spoken to Madison County per se, but we did speak to those two towns.
I would also
Appreciate it.
clarify that the Onondaga plan is in development, but it was actually by the Regional Planning and Development Board, which serves those, the 5-county area.
All right, appreciate it, thank you.
It's hard not to respond to everything you all have said. There's a lot related to sidewalks. I also want to acknowledge, if you could raise your hands, we have Counselor Alyssa Italiano from the town board and Counselor William Nicholson as well. So thank you very much. And if any of you, and besides Kate, I don't know if anyone else helped to lead any of the focus groups or, sorry?
William Medlin.
Yes, and thank you very much to William for housing. And I know Tom Kinsella was also involved in a number of the activities, so thank you very much. But neighborhood sidewalk issues have been something that we have, as a town, have heard about since we started serving. And Elaine Denton, Counselor Elaine Denton, has just presented at the last town board meeting a proposed process for how you create a sidewalk district. Because one of the issues we had was that we had great presentations and generalized interest. But when it came to the rubber meeting the road of how do you prepare a map plan and report and consider getting permissions from all of the residents and create actual sidewalk district, what's the process for doing that? And how far can we get in a process without understanding what support exists in the area where the sidewalk or the greenway or the area to cycle would be? So there, just to point out to you, and it is available, it's called Neighborhood Sidewalk Program. And it's a 9-step process that we're presenting, and it would allow you to gather your neighbors, figure things out, and the town has set aside from the ARPA funding, the American Rescue Plan Act funding, $75,000 to help you, after you reach a certain stage, be able to afford to have a study done and then use that information in order to apply for grants to fund the sidewalk. So ongoing maintenance is something that is still required of the town and the sidewalk district that is created. But it's a plan, a way to move forward, because villages don't have to go through the same process, of course, to make one of these. That's why it's been so difficult to imagine in the town. But we have a process now. So thank you, Counselor Denton.
Is that published on your website?
It is, yeah.
Thank you.
Allison, do you know the best way for people to reach it? Maybe we could put it as one of the cycling things that's right at the top of the
I can
page.
work with Counselor Dutton on that.
Thank you so much.
It's not approved yet though, so I think that's probably, it's still in its sort of infancy stages. It is in our agenda center, both her presentation at the last board meeting and then all of her supporting documents. So I'll work with her to see a way that we can put it out there in a draft form.
So you'll have time to review it and also feedback before it's finalized and voted on. Thank you. Sorry to hijack.
May I say something, please?
And you're welcome to speak from there or to come right up to the podium.
Well, here's better here.
My name is Lucy Gallery, and I've lived in the town for 84 years. And we've gone through this time and time again about the wetlands, the drainage coming down. And at times they were going to clean the creeks and things for the drainage. I live in the Fremont area now. We've lived in Myers Road and down so much of the north part of the town is floodplain. When you address the drainage in the Manlius Fayetteville area, will you please be sure that it doesn't go just to the Manoa area, that it goes beyond what?
Thank you. You know, water goes to Oneida Lake and it goes through you.
And it has to have the creeks, the waterways to get there.
Yeah, thank you. One of the things that we did was a stormwater study group, and there was a lot of emphasis on managing the entire watershed and not just having individual solutions that just moved it to the next place. So yes, the committee did hear that.
Okay, thank you.
So, thank you. Thank you. One of the implementation recommendations and then probably a priority for us would be to certainly do a townwide stormwater analysis, review, and we have support from the villages and surrounding municipalities for cooperation on that. Other people who would like to speak?
Sorry, I forgot something when I came up earlier, so I had made it to two of the members earlier beforehand, but I just wanted on the public record. So I know that Onondaga County is also working on their comprehensive plan with an estimated goal of finishing it in June. And I just want to make sure that you know, that's being considered, that if there is anything conflicting, you know, that they want to put in place, such as some of the things that have been proposed by the governor, that's all kind of considered. I know, you know, the 1% rule and some of those things. And I will share this, I'm asking this as a, you know, as a town resident, not as the chair of the zoning board of appeals, just like Mr. Caliano did, and he was clarifying why he was up there, so I appreciate it. Just if you could take that into consideration.
Thank you for your service on the zoning board too.
Thank you. Thanks, Gary.
Okay. Anybody else? Anybody online?
Are we
Yeah.
allowed to?
We got one person back here. What, I'm
I
sorry.
was just gonna ask, can we submit additional comments?
Absolutely, but we're gonna get to that in a minute, but yes, you'd like to say something?
Yeah, if I can.
Come on up and just introduce yourself and where you live.
Sure. Matt Slomak, Ocean Way. And I just like to, I have a comment with regards to the quarries. I'm looking at your page 68 of the draft. And on the second paragraph, it says, if I go down to the such quarries are regulated through both local mechanisms and the town of Manlius zoning code. And the state mechanisms such as DEC, mineral resources, so on. Existing and future mining efforts must comply with all relevant regulations. And here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to have you consider the following language, probably added right here, and that is due consideration must be given to the potentially negative environmental factors and environmental and quality of life factors that such a quarry may impose on nearby residents. And what I'm referring to specifically is this, is that, you know, we have an aquifer, among other things, first and foremost. We have an aquifer that's runs probably south of the quarry on the top of the hill. And it's been there forever, and thankfully, it's done a tremendous job of serving the homes and residents surrounding that particular area. But obviously, if you put a quarry there, that's gonna consume all sorts of water and can potentially have other negative effects, such as, you know, it's when you're blasting rock and you're going down and you may not be, you know, you're not quite sure what the effects of that may be on a particular water resource. And particularly given the fact that, you know, we tried to have an aqua put through a pipe, freshwater pipe to service our residents, which would in turn have, you know, we would have decreased dramatically the dependence on the aquifer itself. But since it's going to have to last us a few more hundred years easily, it's a very sensitive situation for us. And then also comes into the second effect, which is going to be the noise from blasting of the rock and so on. And if you're within a few hundred yards, much less a quarter or a half mile, or potentially better than that, we all could be potentially affected by it. And perhaps you remember it was decades ago that there were issues with the existing quarry and also some settlements that were made for homeowners who had problems with their foundations that were cracked and had to be repaired. And so, I mean, and that's in you know, probably goes back 30 years ago.
but nonetheless, it's impactful. Not to mention soil erosion, not to mention, loss of natural landscape, and it goes on and on. And so I think that, and by the way, I want to commend everybody's work on this comprehensive plan. Very, very impressive. There's a lot of work that has gone into this, a lot of community feedback. And I give you all tons of credit for it, and thank you very much. But I would just say again, I don't think it's beyond a reasonable request to again say that in the context of this particular plan, we know we all have regulations and so on. But nonetheless, due consideration must be given to the potentially negative and quality of life factors that such a quarry may impose on nearby residents. And I'll make a copy for the secretary. And if you could just take that under consideration, I would be most appreciative. Thank you.
Thank you.
We do have a comment online.
Okay.
Ronnie Morgenstern said that the quarry raises significant concerns connected to the environment, health of residents, water, and natural animal movements through the immediate and broader area.
Thank you. All right, any other?
My name is Dylan Smith. I live on Limberlost in the town of Manlius. And I'm also an architect, so I deal with undertakings like this a lot. I work in affordable housing, I work in senior housing. So again, I think it's important. It can be difficult to get positive feedback from public, so I just wanted to share that I value the process. I think communicating is always something that can be improved as much as you try to get the word out. I didn't even know about this, so an email and a text from an old neighbor, so I think that's something that we can always work on, but I just wanted to share my story a little bit, I guess. I grew up in DeWitt, and I was very privileged. At 26, I bought a house in the village of Manlius. And I was able to do that because it was less than $100,000. So that was my first move from DeWitt into Manlius. I was actually told at the time that if I moved to Manlius, my voice wouldn't be heard because it was a different political climate than I was maybe used to. But the opportunity and the affordability was great. I had great friends here. I later met my wife and we moved out of the village, but stayed in the town. And the real draw for us is we're near Three Falls Woods. We have a beautiful connection to the outdoors. And so I think it's important that we support equity and inclusive communities. And that others, for those of us who are lucky enough to live here, that we support others to say, afford them the opportunity to move up. So that and focus on the environment, I think are great things that are in this plan. So I just want to say that.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else? Am I? All right, being that there is no further testimony, I will call this public hearing to a close. We will hold the record open for written comments until April 14th. And I'm going to speak to your other comment about this. This is the steering committee. The town board is having a work session about the comprehensive plan on April 12th. So there's going to be another discussion with a different set of people.
Open to the public.
Open to the public. It's not a public hearing, but it's the meeting. So we expect that we're going to take all the input you gave us today. Some of you are going to send us emails afterwards because you thought of something the minute you left here, because that's what always happens to me. And then there'll be additional comments after the dialogue with the board. So the board meeting will be on Wednesday, and the 14th is the Friday. So that's going to be the cutoff point for comments. So even if you choose to listen to the board dialogue and then say, ah, that gave me another idea, you can still stick it in there on Thursday or Friday, and it will still be considered to be included in the final draft, which will be completed after April 14th. So that's the timeline that we're looking at.
Sarah, could you repeat the date and the time of that?
Okay, so so initially, so this is from here on, this is the public hearing. The public part's closed, but there's comments welcome until the 14th of April. There's another dialogue similar to this on April 12th from 5 to 6 p.m. with the town board. And the steering committee members are invited to that, but that's the town board discussion, not the steering committee discussion. Today's the steering committee discussion, which we're going to do right now. But that's the time frame. Does that work for everybody? Okay. Yes.
So if you submit comments, what is the email address or the other?
Comprehensive planning at townofmanlius.com .org, or A Weber at townofmanlius.org.
I think a bunch of my cards may be.
They are right on the corner there. Behind Nicole, I think.
And it will get routed to us if anyone calls the town. We can.
And if you submit a paper, we get those too. Everything gets shared with everybody.
I'd just ask you if the mayors of various villages are included in this particular conversation with the boards, and they are.
Yeah, we convened the steering committee with representatives from the mayor's appointed. So Mayor Worrell of the Village of Manlius is officially a part of the steering committee and has his update tonight for the village and isn't here. Mayor Brazil invited a trustee of the Village of Manoa, Bobby Shep, to represent the village, and we're grateful to have Mayor Olson asked Rick Hall to join and represent the village of Fayetteville.
Stretch, isn't it?
We love it, but yeah, and so, you know, I think that we have been really keenly aware, Sarah's been closely involved with the village of Fayetteville's comprehensive planning process, so we've tried to have an eye toward, be aware of, but I really took to heart, I will say as a quick note, this idea of coordination and being kind of specific about how we plan to coordinate or be involved. I really heard that. I'll just, it's a quick note. Is that helpful?
Thank you.
Yeah.
So at this point, we want to have a little dialogue with the steering committee. So I know that there's some comments that some people had planned to make. And then I also want to make sure we hear from everybody. So if we could do just to go around and have people say anything that you want to say, and then dialogue amongst each other. Does that work? So start, if you have any comments you want to share.
Is there any thought to defining the level of participation from the public?
So how would you
Quantify?
Whatever, we had 3,000 participate out of 33,000, whatever that number might be.
Yeah.
So that there's a recognition of how much there was and how much there wasn't.
We might ask, do you, Grace and Keith, do you have ideas for how we represent that in terms of like demographically ages, geographic locations, because we have these numbers of individual participants and data we gathered around feedback. For example, I was going to get the numbers of they have a digital record at the Y, at each of the Y locations. We had our information up in the lobby for over a week in both of the Y locations. And so we can see how many sort of eyeballs generally we got through there because they have everyone's IDs. So that's one number that I think we should include for sure.
We know how many people took the survey, some of the other things. So yeah, we could look for, so I don't mean to cut off my process. So we're gonna go around and then I'll come back to my process. So
No, my only comment is you said that this is
Can you
gonna be.
speak up, please?
Yes, my only comment is, you said that this was going to be available for people to submit questions until April. And so I guess not marketing, but how we're getting the word out to people, can we work on increasing that? in the
Okay.
next couple of days, and
Yeah.
we did get the feedback of having only like one day that people could read it and come to this meeting.
Yeah, should we, one of the things we can do, I know that, Dave Tyler of the, Eagle Bulletin has, information from us and we'll be covering this particular meeting, which will be somewhat helpful. But one of the things we could do also is do Facebook ads. We could develop a Facebook ad, or YouTube ad so that it's going out on, in ways that people are clicking, and we can do that to the geographical area.
I think it's important too to like include the deadline.
And, oh, thank you. Do you want to share your idea?
April 15th or 12th or whatever.
Oh, yes, for that. We've got other ideas.
We got,
coming up.
when we get around to
You
it.
go around. I'll add it.
I
Okay.
was just gonna offer that one way to help spread the word is, the libraries have a pretty robust, like 5,000 followers on Facebook and big e-blast lists and things like that. So we could coordinate with Manlius Library and Manila and get it out in that way. That'd be great.
And we can also
But-
purchase Peach Jar credits to get it out to the school district and also.
Can
use
I
the channel.
suggest just the hard,
Yes.
I think we should have hard copies at each of the library that residents can
Yes.
read, and also maybe even a comment box, so. Because I think some of us that are online all day, last thing we want to do is look at online again. So I think we're hearing a lot of good comments tonight, I would like to hear more, and I think. We're at the stage now where we have a story that, we've got a book put together, whereas up until this point. It's been a lot of pieces, with their help, we were able to put it into one way to read it, but I think now that people can really dive into it, as we've heard today, now it's all the more important to hear your comments. And I think having the hard copies at the library, knowing that you can go in person and just, so if you can't get to the town here, would be very helpful. Would that be possible?
Absolutely.
And then have like comments where they can just do it right there and just drop it in a container?
Yeah, we got the sheets right here we could use. Okay. So Carrie, you're,
I think just as long as making sure getting the word out there, getting people to comment as much as possible, if we could utilize different forms of communication. It's definitely needed and yeah.
thank you. So Leah, you were responding to her, so you have your own choice now, just something else you want to say.
No, I think that's great. I think throughout the process that there have been lots of opportunities for participation, and I really appreciated seeing that, and even knowing that following tonight, there's still an opportunity for more input, I think is great, and yeah.
Okay, awesome. Heather.
I'm gonna defer.
Okay.
I'm gonna waive my time.
I just want to say thank you to everyone that came and commented, and I think it's important that we hear what you say and also comment back somehow within this document, be it in the appendix, to address the concerns, because coming here and taking your time, it's important that we take the time to address that through somehow in this document. Even myself, we've had so many meetings, but this is only in the last few weeks, we've gotten to see it all together. And it only keeps getting better with the engineer's help over here. It just keeps getting more clear, and as it gets more clear, you see things that need to be refined. And we're hearing that tonight. So I think we're getting there, we're just not there yet, and I think I'm glad to hear that there are still many more comments that can be added. That it's not just today or tomorrow, but it's actually a couple of weeks, it sounds like. That we will then have it, I think as a steering committee, have a chance to address. And that's what I want to make clear, is that there are members of the steering committee that we all still want to address those concerns, that it just doesn't get sent to the town board. And that's it. No, we can let everybody go around, then I'll come back to this. 'Cause it's more of a final thing.
Okay,
That's the
so you didn't need
recommendation.
to read from that person's.
No,
Okay.
she's already got it. You already got the three people, the person's letters that we mentioned, right? And I'll give them to her. Yep, it's okay.
So, I think this has been a great process. I think you've been very respectful and reciprocal with the conversations, and it's been cohesive. I'll go first with some of the comments I got today and over the past week or so. There are concerns with the survey results, the sample size, like how many people responded, and the plan was built around such a small amount. Another ongoing thing was sort of the communication. We're kind of missing a certain demographic in terms of communication, making them aware. So I'm not sure, I know we've tried different strategies, but maybe we could implement some different strategies to reach those people.
there's like 4 or 5 specific issues, one with the sidewalks. Again, you did touch on it, about the districts, right? So people were asking who will maintain or pay for those sidewalks, because there are portions of us that live on the northern end that don't, you know, need or want sidewalks and don't want to have to give away some of our greenage to make way for the sidewalk. One of the concerns I didn't think about, when speaking with someone who deals with like DPW and Public Works, was in the transition to electric vehicles for the town. One of the concerns with the long-term condition of the vehicles when you're dealing with salt, you know, up here when they're in the winter, we're not sure of like what the long-term, and we were talking about emergency and service vehicles that need to be able, like ready to go and for long-term time span. So that was another issue. I did hear some things about a pool. I'm not sure. We can write in the fan, especially with some swimmers and stuff. It does definitely tie into our public health, our youth, also mental health in my eyes. The more you get out and exercise, I think we're gonna have happy, healthier kiddos. And I'm very closely, you know, involved with the FM swim program. I know they lost the CAS pool. So I just have to give a little plug for that part to feel good of my conscience to go home tonight.
I'm all about that. Let's do it.
But I think you could tie it into everything from, you know, and then, let me put Arla, I'm sorry, I'm very kind of good with following the stuff. Safety and time away. And the other thing, someone mentioned about codes. I don't know that necessarily this should have codes in it, but someone mentioned that, so I just felt it was like due diligence just to mention it. But I think hence, like we've been given a lot of time over the 2 years. We've been very careful and diligent about, you know, planning this and thoughtful. I would like more time to ruminate over everything, you know, sort of, I go through things very carefully, and we've been listening to some good, you know, comments from the public, and I feel like we've taken our time, and now that we're like 5, 6 of the way through, I feel like all of a sudden it's like rushing to get through, and I would like to slow down a little bit more. Sorry.
Can I just go back and add one thing? I just want to add one thing that I can't remember because of the document, but one of the things that came out was we did survey high school students or students in schools. And one of the things that came clear was they had no place to go. And I think the pool is an example of a place that we need places for young people to go, be outside, or to be even inside. And one of the things I think we need to do too in the document is to tell the story of Manlius a little bit, because back in the day, you could go to the Fayetteville Mall and hang out if you're a teenager. And so I think it was really interesting that I didn't have the idea, but somebody had the idea to survey the high school students, and we need to make sure that that's addressed. And I think the sidewalks gets to that, the way the kids can get together and be around just as well as other people in the community. And so I think the pool is an example of that. So.
Yeah, what everybody else said. No, I think, you know, all the comments, tonight were spot on. And, you know, what can I say now that I'm at the end and everybody else has said everything?
But I think the one thing is, it's not the end. That's one thing I want to emphasize. I think that's what Katie, that's what our concerns are, is that we're getting to the end. I feel like we've made really good progress, but again, every time we bring something out or have a new version of this plan, or as it becomes more and more of a plan that people can get into, we hear more informed comments, what I want to say, more educated, more thoughtful comments each time. So then the challenge to us is to incorporate those ideas to address that.
Could I ask a question of the steering committee? Well, also, I just want to provide background. One of the steps that's required legally for a New York State comprehensive plan is to have the steering committee vote on the plan and officially send it to the town board. So what we're talking about now is that sort of detail of, do we officially kind of release it from this stage of the process with the steering committee and send it to the town board? We don't want to close the process, but we have our hope is that we can vote as a town board at the end of May. And so we're just trying to make sure we work within the time period. And if the steering committee is willing, and you can talk about this, but before we get to that, I would just say that, I was curious to know if the steering committee has an appetite to work on some sort of introductory narrative that also allows us to pull out and provide a bit of a guide for jumping into the content. And if you are willing to do that, that would be something backing up from the April 12th date that I think the town board would really appreciate in the workshop. If you're willing to take a stab at that and collectively feedback to us, because to have your voices would be really helpful. I'm sort of looking to Kay and Don as leaders.
No, I think that's important, because one of the things that I've heard from people that I've shown the plan to is they get sort of lost in it, because it's so many details, it's overwhelming, and I think we need, and that's why I just go, we gotta sort of tell the story of what do we try to do here, what was the process, and the challenges. And we, you know, the challenges is growth, Micron, the challenge is also development in the upper areas, you know, Pompey and down, we don't want all that water to end up in Kay's backyard. As well as the development coming that way.
Right, and that's the other side
So-
of it, is that we do want to make sure that we keep what we love about our town that's so
Yeah.
precious, that what brought us here is maintained, you know, Micron coming and all of a sudden my backyard, the woods are torn down and we have big, you know, commercial development. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's good. I lost my train of thought.
No, so you were just.
Oh,
saying-
yes, the
yeah,
narrative.
but
So we
yeah,
do
the
need to have a narrative, because I think if you're looking to see what's the concern about water being addressed, because we had a whole stormwater committee and we are very concerned about the water issues. That somehow we need to speak to that in the beginning, that these are the highlights that we've heard, and it's addressed like on page this, or somehow that there's a way for you to go see if the quarterly concerns were addressed or the sidewalks were addressed. Because I think it's important to, because it becomes over, I don't know about you, but I get overwhelmed with it all. There's a lot there.
I think with the demographics in our population, they want information fast, quick. So if we have some type of narrative that catches an eye and grabs them,
Yes.
there, I think that's very important to get that information out to them so they can get them when they definitely need
But
that.
like you're saying, it's like uniform, like weave a thread throughout each kind of segment to make it like a flowing story, so
Yeah.
to speak.
Yeah, so maybe the same way, maybe how we've used an idea that I have now, just generating from what we're talking about. We have these images, but maybe before each of the segments where there's an image, there are like some key phrases or something narrative that like leads you into it. That helps people key into that. So-
Another idea we have is in the opening narrative is maybe make a teeny version of that, and it's that said this, like, so when you find the leaves, it means this, and when you find the mountain, it means that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So you could kind of easily get to the part, so it just really makes it flow.
Iconography or whatever, so.
Yeah.
I know, that's-
Iconography, that's it.
Yeah,
That's
that's like your favorite.
There's a word.
That's like Grace's favorite thing to do. I know. I'm sure everybody, you must sit around with the other municipalities you work with and be like, we have heard this before. So
But
I want to take those learnings.
I think the important thing is,
What's the final adoption process when you, whatever, when the public has said all their input due and the plan is in the final draft, what is the final adoption process?
So from here, it will go to the county planning board for approval.
Okay.
Then it goes to the town board. The town board holds another public hearing on the final draft. And then it's final. So
Then it's law.
then it's law. So we expect it, well,
And our
Ish.
planning board is also reviewing it.
Our
And
planning
our
board
planning
has a
board
meeting on
is-
the 24th as
yeah,
well. Yeah.
so. So it'll be the town of Manlius Planning Board, the county planning board. Based on the conversation today, we will send a copy to all three villages for their edification. Then we will have a public hearing and then a vote. So we expect it to be done later in May. So there's time for this process to happen.
Just a point of clarification, does the county planning board only comment? Or do they give you a thumbs up or thumbs down vote?
They can do both.
Okay.
So they can say, this is not in compliance with what our plan is and you have to change this section, or they can say that it's okay.
And the same with all the other.
The others too.
Participants that you just mentioned?
Yep.
Okay.
And then behind you, Dave had a question earlier.
Yeah, I just was gonna say that I think that the public comment that you're doing, I think there's a lot of good ideas open to the, libraries and things, but I think that's gonna take some time to get done. I think 2 weeks is a short period of time, and the other part that is the fact that next week is a spring recess for families, so
Yeah.
those families are gone, they're not thinking about the comprehensive plan.
Yeah.
And those are the people, the young ones that have kids that are rooted in this town, that are gonna be here for a while. And I think that not to outcast any other, population, but I think that those are people, that are gonna affect the sidewalks, affect some of these things. I think that public comment should be longer to make sure that we really do get a hold of those opinions.
There's nothing to keep us from extending out. Is there, Sarah? I mean, other
Well, I
than
think we need to schedule the other steering committee, that's really.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about.
Yeah,
Let's
and
do
so
it next week after
the
that.
steering committee, so the idea is that, the steering committee needs to meet, it would be great if they met after the 12th, the workshop period. But I do think that we could.
We could still have another time to incorporate like what you're saying, right?
Well, the
I just don't think
24th
we
is
should
another logical.
Because you have an end date that you're trying to get to, but I think that the input's more important than the date.
Well, I think that's what our concern is too. Our concern is too, is that we want to try to gather everything we can right up to the last minute, but yet we also don't want to get bogged down that we could potentially miss out on opportunities.
Right.
Because if we get a grant, if we get a plan in place that works for everybody, it opens up grant opportunities and money to potentially come. But again, it doesn't do us any good if it doesn't. What you're saying.
If it doesn't reflect.
That communication stuff is important, right? So
Yeah.
you have a timeline based on grants and things that we might not know about. And we
Right.
also don't know the fact of, there is a lot of information in this plan.
Yep.
Some are grand ideas and others are feasible ideas.
Mhm.
But we don't have an idea from that group up there, at least I don't feel I've heard it ever. That what takes priority and what are those feasible things that, let's prioritize those things out that we're gonna get done and actually prove to the community that we're gonna handle and take care of. And which ones are sort of on our, not a wish list, but hey, these are out there. They're gonna take a county and state mentality to get done. So we're gonna put those over here on a table for a minute, and we're gonna take care of the ones that affect us now and in the near future first. I think that comprehensive plan has to be prioritized in how it's going to function and how efficiently the town go forward. There's a lot of ideas on which ones are gonna be the most bang for their buck right off the bat and what's gonna happen. That's
So like a rubric for like, how do you make a priority? Like if it gets us, access to money plus town interest plus,
Well, you're worried about the money and you're worried about how to get that money. That's fine. I get it. I'm worried about from your study, why are those high school kids leaving? Why are they not coming back here until they decide to have a family? So the idea is, we should be talking about those kinds of issues. Those should be the priorities. Why are older people leaving the town and not even staying here because the taxes are too high or whatever it is? Because there's not one level family building for those people. So we need to think about the economics that are making this place run, to flourish those people back in here, to have the money in the town to build your sidewalks so people can ride their bikes. Not build the sidewalks and hope that the business comes.
So if I hear you right, what you'd like to see is where the goals are in the document. It's almost the ranking of the goals, like this is priority one
Yeah,
for
I'd like
these
to know
goals.
what your thoughts are, because I think there's a lot of thoughts on paper, but I think deep down somewhere, there's a bigger thought behind there that we're not really hearing, or what you really want out of this. There's a goal, there's an end game for this somewhere along the way, whatever that may be. What is your end game? What is your end game that affects my living in this town?
So, and as a collective group, I think these aren't necessarily even, we've offered lots of input from ourselves anecdotally and from the people that live around us, right? And I think that's why it's good that we have a geographically diverse group up here. Because it is important, like if everyone's worried about sidewalks, I'm worried about the water flooding and building up land, so it's gonna put me deeper underwater, and paying for sidewalks that I don't want. So then we figured out all different stuff. I think all of us also are advocating for what we hear from these different sessions. And this isn't necessarily our 7, 9, 15 people's, this is our vision. This is our vision for the town. It's more of, we got together, culminate all the data and everything else that people have been, reporting to us. And then we're trying to weave it together with the help of you guys, obviously. But I think that we need more time to get through this, you know, I don't know what necessarily are you looking for?
I don't know if it's one thing in general, it's just the fact that there's a lot that, it's 80 pages.
Right, that's
That's
what
what-
Don was saying,
Like,
like,
exactly, I agree, and I agree, I'm just saying, but there are things in there, so like. There's certain things for each one of you that are important, right? But they're not. Maybe you haven't, I just haven't seen it, you're not extending yourself out on that branch to say that that's where you're gonna hang your hat. So,
and we have, and there have been many meetings where we have had those very tough, thoughtful conversations that
and they're
are
important.
very impassioned.
And that collaborative brings it together, right? And you
Yep.
see both sides, and that's what makes good decision making all day long. But at the same time, we've done that, and now we've got to move on. Which one of those roads to the top to take care of things?
And
I just don't know where they fall in all these.
I think you're putting a really good challenge towards us, because, and again, that's where I feel like the narrative, I mean, water is definitely an issue, right?
Right.
Traffic is an issue.
Yeah.
Who's gonna, if you're young, are you gonna wanna live here if you can't get across Burdick Street to the businesses, right?
Yeah.
So I think that you've laid out a good challenge for us, is how do we prioritize how to get to a nice community that's livable and people wanna come back to and stay in,
Well,
right?
and from start to finish, how
Yeah.
that's gonna happen. I mean, I don't need to capitalize on it.
No, but it's,
No, it helps us as we go to the next.
You have an idea, right? And you wanna put it out there. I wanna hear it. But I wanna know from start to finish that idea and how it's gonna go forward. How is it going to get there? How is it gonna be there? And how are we gonna maintain it from, I don't,
So-
I just
Well, that would
want
be
this
I-
to be out there.
Yeah, I think
Given the
that
challenge
that
for us
is
to-
beyond the scope of this plan. So I do want to just comment that this plan is not an operational plan. That's the next step, is to get into that piece. But I think your first thing about specifying our priorities is this plan.
Yeah,
So
but a comprehensive plan should be those priorities, whether how they're maintained. That thought.
Well, there's an
should be somewhere
evaluation.
Buried in there.
Yeah.
we got a
Dave,
couple
may I-
other people.
Yeah, but can I just respond to what David's saying, and then I, of course,
Yeah.
want to make sure. No, but I hear you in that, one of the things we talked about this afternoon when Don and I were chatting was, what's our stated evaluation of sort of how we're moving along and revisiting periods, things we'd like to recommend. That's something we want to make sure is clear. Also, you know, when the town board, maybe the counselors could speak to this, but when the town board thinks about why we're so excited about having this adopted, that's what I meant by made into law, adopted, is that we can go, okay, we, here's the consolidated funding application portal for New York State. Here's the climate action plan that's been put before us too. Here's what people are saying to us. We're making our budget. What are we gonna spend time on doing? Is a storm, we can see the benefit of spending time to write the grant for the stormwater analysis, because here's what it impacts all these different implementation goals. So that's why I said the rubric of like prioritizing where we spend our time and our precious resources and the budgeting. That's a good example of how it gets action. Some of it's community driving. We have a conversation with the library about their comprehensive plan, and we go, oh, okay. So we're looking at what your priorities are. Let's go back to this document. We know we want to do this, this, and this. It guides us in that way. So it's both a linear thing that's an annual thing plus an opportunity-based document. And when developers come and say, what are you looking for? We can be like, well, we have the data. This is the kind of style of building that someone would prefer in that area, that kind of thing.
Can I just add one other piece? I had a good conversation with Grace and Keith from Barton. Well, I'm gonna say the last name wrong, the engineering firm. Going to your point, because no document's gonna be perfect, right? It's only, what we wanna do is make sure it's a living document that we come. So I asked them, like, have you had communities like successful, what's a successful comprehensive plan, right? Is it just something that sits on the desk or it gets dust, right? And they gave me some examples of communities that treat it as a living document almost, if I'm characterizing this right, where we can come back and say, wow, we really missed this, or we need to up this priority because of things that just didn't get captured. We as a group can continue to meet and continue to hear and provide support to this plan to, I don't see it as I see it as a living document that is, we hear feedback, because we don't know what it's gonna be. in 2 years, right? We don't know exactly what's gonna roll out with my project, you know? So it's very important that we constantly have a feedback loop into this, because it doesn't work if the community isn't engaged with it.
Do you think it would help if we have, because it's very cumbersome, we've all talked about that, it's really hard to get through and like understand, a lot of people, even when they first see it, are like, what is this, what are we supposed to do with it? I wonder if almost like a Cliff's Notes, like a bridge, like introduction of basically just like 1 or 2 pages, just kind of explaining what it is, and then the bullet points of the important pieces and chunks.
I think it's a great idea.
Okay.
Okay, I just want to make it, we are going to have to end at 8, so we've got a couple more minutes here. I have a comment here, I've got a comment there, and I got a comment here. So the you three are going to be it, so go ahead.
I just wanted to get your feedback on how you have felt in terms of not just how you represent your specific and general interests geographically, as you spread out, but how satisfied have you been with the numbers of people who receive your emails, the number of people who did the comprehensive plan survey? Because I must have been asked 6 times to do that, right? And I tried to do it 7, but and then the open houses and you know, I mean, you did a lot. I mean, there's been so many people involved in this already.
Well, I'll
And
let
we
Rick
don't know-
answer that.
What's that?
I'll let Rick answer that.
Oh, good, Rick.
It's been mixed.
I've been extremely disappointed.
Mhm.
I mean,
Because-
we've got 33,000 people in this town,
Right,
and there's a handful of people
right.
that have.
The people in this room, thank you very much.
Yeah.
And, you know, but they've been there, meeting after open house after, you know, and, you
But I
know,
feel like
the
that's-
experts tell me
that's
that our numbers are good statistically to other comprehensive plans.
They
But it's
are,
very disheartening to me that,
yeah.
you know, 3,000, 5,000, 10,000 are gonna make, you know, these recommendations for 33,000.
About what you could have done to you know, get more people involved? Or are you understanding that you send out a fundraising letter to 100,000 people and only 5%? If you get 5% response, you're celebrating. And in our town, a lot of what happens, I think, is that we don't sign up for those emails. We don't go to these meetings. We don't, you know, we just don't. And I mean, I take myself out of that because I do participate and I do try to be aware of what's going on, but the amount of misinformation that's out there isn't your fault. It's lack of information that can be had easily by anyone who reaches out and gets it. But if you can't get them to answer the door when you knock on it, you knocked on it.
I think that the town and the committee has done about everything they could do to try to reach out and provide the opportunities. I don't think that's where it's lacking. I just don't think people paying any attention.
I would also add that, you know, in the last few years, there's an information explosion, you know, and I think people are overloaded with information, and then you add COVID. So I think we had a little bit of an uphill, it's a different dynamic today. And I think people get a little burned out on this. I get burned out, information overload, right? It's a never ending newspaper out there. It used to be, you just got one newspaper and you could see that there was a town meeting. But somehow we still I would like to take Rick's challenge and try this, can we reach out? And because this document doesn't work if people don't have buy-in, and just, you know, I'm a teacher. Teaching and learning are separate events. Just because we're out there teaching doesn't mean learning's happening. So we're gonna monitor and we're gonna adjust. And you guys have given us good comments, and we're gonna try to come up with a strategy to reach a few more. Like, I'd like to try to reach in here for more businesses. Because when I've asked a few business owners, are you aware of this? And the comprehensive plan?
Right.
So we see it sort of as mission. And the other thing I've talked to the board about, members, is I don't want this process to stop. I want to see it to keep using. And so if we see adjustments, we can make it. And that's what I found out from the engineering team is, yeah, if we identify a spot, like the water issue is still there, what else can we do? Can we rethink the plan? So I don't think we should see this as a final, but really we're getting there. We're just not there yet.
So Craig.
So, I'll preface this with the comment. I come from an academic background.
Can you speak a little louder, please? Sorry.
My wife never asked me to speak louder. But for you, I will.
Thank you.
So I come from an academic background, and one of the principles of the kinds of decisions we would make, and this is at the university level, for decisions like promotion, tenure, et cetera, you don't make the same recommendation twice. And so the question I have is, how do, and this is Sarah and Heather, you as town board members recommend to yourselves what the steering committee wants? Would it be better if you took an ex officio stance and not vote? Because the problem is the perception that the recommendation becomes a done deal.
Sure.
Thank you. You're the first person who said that. That's interesting. And I think that's great.
What, do you have thoughts about that in terms of like, we have to have a certain number of people in order to, number of votes to pass something at some point, but I mean, if it's a sort of if it makes people feel like it isn't being, we've tried really hard to make sure that the.
I appreciate
Oh, no, but I was gonna
it's
say
a propriety question.
No, I've gotcha. I think that I will say that it's been really hard to not burden the steering committee, but also engage and make sure that there's this push-pull. And I really think now is a moment where you can, as a steering committee, especially with this last push, take even more ownership. And that's very welcome. I think.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I got one last comment.
I want to say I don't have a problem with you guys voting. Just because it happens in every level of government anyway, if you're in part of a committee. So, but what I would like to know is, are your priorities going to cross with available funding opportunities? And are you facing deadlines?
Okay, so the deadline for the current year, the application comes out in May and the application, and the application is due in July. So as long as we complete all of this process by the beginning of July, we are still eligible for funding for 2024.
Takes time to prepare things though.
Funding to return.
That's the state.
There's multiple funding sources too.
So there's other things, but that would be the bigger one that would impact it. So that's the goal we're working toward, is to be sure we can get in for that. So thank you for the question, just to provide a factual. Okay, so steering committee. We need another meeting. Can you quickly look at the room for the last week of April? Because I have a feeling there was nothing the last week of April. So I just want to make sure. Well, you can't with the resolution to approve it if you're not going to.
Just keep that as.
Yes, you could do that. Okay.
So that way.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, yeah, so go ahead and make that motion. So Don is going to make a motion to convene again on the day. Okay.
No, I'm the same.
I love that you guys gave us something.
Okay, so do you have a date?
The feedback thing.
I think it's great.
Only coming out.
April 18th? Can everybody do April 18th?
Yeah, I have some, like, and I want to discuss some questions.
Yeah.
I heard this.
I feel like we don't, everyone doesn't need individual.
There's lots, there's 100 grants you could apply for any year.
Oh,
Yeah. So is April 18th a possible date for a steering committee?
I can't. Oh my gosh. Is that my phone that was over there ringing earlier and I was wondering? I'm so sorry, right on the other side of you, Allison, in front of your other computer is my phone. Oh, apologies. I was looking at it now. Sorry about that.
How about the 25th?
I am not available but you can certainly get someone else to show if you want that.
All right. Is there any other Nate that you are available that week?
Not in that week. I've got the 17th of board room available, is a Monday, and the 18th of board room is available the Tuesday.
Would 17th make a difference?
17th probably, I just have to make sure I don't have a.
Monday, the 17th?
Let me just double check my school information.
All right, how about Monday, the 17th? So then
Anything
you
on
can
my
get in your
calendar is
resolution.
tax.
All right, we got 3 minutes. We're going to do a resolution. Go ahead.
All right, so I'm gonna make a resolution.
Thanks again for coming.
Thank you. So I'm gonna make a resolution that we recommend that this current draft of the 2023 Town of Manlius Comprehensive Plan to the town board of the town of Manlius for their feedback on the current plan, the draft plan, and that the steering committee will meet again on Monday, April 17th, to hear their feedback and to incorporate comments that were made from today on. So
So I looked, I have a school board meeting that night, so
we can always amend it.
we can amend the date or no?
We can amend the date.
Okay, so like, can we just put that as tentative right now, or no? You want to?
If it's school board night, you can't come.
I can't.
And you can't come the 18th either.
No. And we don't.
You
have
guys-
anything the
So
night-
we can make a date to be determined.
Okay, so you want me to read it
Somewhere
again?
around.
No, you just put in date to be determined.
The date to be determined as provided by New York State Town Law 272A6B. And with all, do I need that sentence too? All edits are not secret.
No.
No, okay, yep. So basically, we're recommending that the town board take a look at this current draft and give feedback. The steering committee will reconvene at a date to be determined to incorporate those comments, all of your comments, and any comments that come in between now
And the date to be
and the
determined.
date to be determined. Are we,
Will we as members be able to read those comments
In
as
advance.
they come in
Yeah.
advance? Okay.
I think that's fair, because a few of us had talked, that we don't necessarily feel prepared to vote on this and then send it off to you guys to vote on. We need more time to kind of digest and hear back.
And we'll do it in parallel. It's good.
I
Is
think-
that
Do we need a second for that, my motion?
yeah, do I have a second, or does somebody want to comment before we second? Anybody have other comments?
All right.
I'll second.
All in favor? Okay, so we have a plan. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That worked out really well.
And I recommend a microphone.
Oh,
A microphone system.
Thank you.